All right, welcome back. Welcome to phase two. We're going to do our best to figure out what we can get through, what we can't get through, try to get some good projects in. So as you can see here, I've got some notes. We're going to talk about chapters 12 and 13, which is all swing graphics. And I'll post the notes and we'll do some assignments along the way. So notice it says go through chapters. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through chapters 12 and 13. We'll do that in iJava also. It's going to take us a little while. We'll do some mini project coding problems with graphics. We'll probably also do another little one with layout managers. These should both be pretty short. And then if we have time, we'll do an image processing project, which is really a lot of fun to do. We'll see if we have time. And then basically we start planning for the final project. So as you can see here, I will make adjustments if it looks like we can't get to all of those projects because of the pace of learning here. I will be available via email with questions. Also ask you guys for questions whenever I do a video. And the Zoom, I think Mondays and Wednesdays from like 11 to 1 is probably when we're going to do a Zoom gatherings. I'm not sure we'll do it on the first day, but that's since I can't do the math department because then students would be in math classes getting help there. So I'm going to do it during the arts times. All right, so let's get started. Um, so chapters 12 and 13 are graphics and graphical user interfaces. And the question is, what do you already know? You might know the J-frame is sort of the content window. It's where content goes. And the J panel is different from the J frame. The J panel is really a container with all kinds of other components in it. It's a place to put things, or it can be used as a canvas, and that's how we've used it. We've used it in both ways, but for the Rabbit Roamer project. And then you saw things like J text area and J text field, where you can get and set text, J buttons and J labels. And we haven't really talked about layout managers and flow layouts and all that, and we'll get to all of that. Paint component, we're going to paint component and repaint. We're going to dig into and try to understand it better, even though we've used it. And you've got draw string and oval and rectangle and image, and a bunch of other things you probably haven't seen. You've seen action listener, but not mouse listener. Maybe not key listener, mouse motion listener, document listener. So those are all actually interfaces. We did learn about those in chapter 11, but we haven't learned these specific ones yet. So one great way to introduce this is to first recognize that BlueJ, if you look at it, is written in Java. So even though it's code that you can write and edit Java code and then it compiles and runs Java code, the project itself, the app itself is written in Java and then compiled into an executable. So if BlueJ is written in Java, you can sort of imagine it then. You don't have to imagine it. Imagine it though as components in Swing. It had to be put together somehow. So for instance, the window that is your project window would be in a J-frame. The J-frame is just like a picture frame. Picture frame doesn't have anything in it. Picture frame is something you want to put something inside. So a J-frame is just this window that says, all right, put something in here. And then these, even though they don't look like our regular buttons, since these are clickable, these are J buttons. And you can change the look and feel of buttons, so that's possible to do. And you can put even images inside them. These might even be Unicode characters in there. And then this would likely be a J panel with paint component, because I see that there are lines and things here that you would have to draw. And then these might be J panels to hold other the stuff. And way down here, there might be a panel here, but with just a J label in it, because a J label is just text by itself. Different from draw string, it's just text that you place, just like placing a button. You can place a piece of text. So if I actually wanted to imagine sitting down right now and saying, if I know Swing, I'm going to try to just code this. Just the face of it, right? Not the compiler and all that. So you might say, all right, it's a J frame, I'm going to call it the display frame, let's say. So maybe, I establish that as an object. And then I have some panels like the classes panel and the code pad panel, and this is in BlueJ used for objects. So the object panel, maybe this is the status panel, maybe this is called the button panel. Maybe the left panel has the button panel in it. And maybe the bottom panel is the name for the thing that has the object panel and the code panel. You might wonder why you would need so many panels for things. Well, if you just tried to put this panel and this panel into the J frame, it's a little harder to organize if you put them all in a panel itself, you can place this panel here. We will talk about all that later. But that's kind of what it would look like if you're trying to build that. And then you would just build in all the other parts to it. Okay, so I did want to talk about just generally giving you a big overview today, and then over the next week or two, we'll get all the details. But a general plan for graphical user interface is when you start with the window. So this is really important. You can do it two ways. You can either create a JFrame object in main. So you can say JFrame GUI equals new JFrame, right? You can call the constructor and make a JFrame. Or you can make a class that extends JFrame. Remember, that inherits it, repurposes it, and gets all the stuff that JFrames have. And when you make a new JFrame object this way, by calling the constructor, it's a lot harder to write methods in it. So here, if I just have a class called whatever I want it to be, extends JFrame, then I can write all the methods in that class, and they'll do all the things that JFrames need to do. And I would just make an object of that class. And that's what you've seen me do in the past. So same with a sort of canvas to draw on. You can either create a new JPanel, calling the constructor and then doing things with that, or you can just make a class that is a JPanel. Right? So all I'm saying is instead of making a JFrame object or making a JPanel object, let's define a class that is a JFrame, define a class that is a JPanel, make objects from those. And then we can define everything we want inside of those classes. So I hope that makes some sense. I'll put out a Google form later. If there are questions on these things, keep track of them and you can fill that out and say, wait, I don't quite understand that. So you've got a window, you've got, let's say, a canvas. If you want to paint inside that canvas, you want to draw things, you would write a paint component method, which you've seen uses a graphics object to draw shape and text, and we will talk about that more as we go along. But paint component is called automatically, actually, when you call the constructor of a JPanel. It paints everything. But then after that, you call repaint. And I will finally give you the details of what's really happening with repaint in this chapter. And then, of course, if you're doing graphical user interface, you might want some components like buttons or sliders or any number of things, radio buttons, checkboxes. And if you want those, you make sense to create another panel, create the buttons, and put them in the panel, and then put the panel in the JFrame. So a panel is like I've got a row of 17 buttons. I want to put them in a panel, and I can just place that panel anywhere I want in the JFrame. So I'm just going to talk about one more thing here. I don't want to make any of these videos too long, so we'll stop here, and then I'll make a second one in this little series here. So that's sort of graphical user interface setup. The other thing to understand about Swing in general is that it's different from procedural sort of linear programming where you write code and the code goes from one line to the next and it executes, and when it's finished, it's finished. The key thing about when you run a program that's event-driven, that's based on Swing, is that when you run the code, nothing happens. Nothing happens. It sits there. It might build some things and just sits there and waits. Right? That's not usually what your other code does unless you have a scanner. But when you build something with GUI, you start it up, as you know, you've seen this before in our string one from first semester. It starts up and there's a bunch of buttons to click and things to do, but nothing happens. So event-driven programming, it's sitting and waiting for something to happen. So for instance, when you press a key on the keyboard, if you have one of these things up and running, Swing says, oh, you've pressed a key. So it creates an object. It calls its own little constructor and makes a new key event object. And that key event object has information. So the key event object is automatically going to call key pressed. Swing will automatically call a key press, sending it the key event object. Okay, that's part of the key listener interface. So again, you press a key, it makes an object and sends it to key pressed. Of course, you're going to write key press. So what you do with that key event object is up to you. But you get it passed automatically here. You can see the method header. The object has useful things like key character and key code. When you click the mouse, a new mouse event object is created by Swing. And then Swing calls mouse clicked and some other things and sends that mouse event object to mouse clicked. So again, the bigger point, general point I'm making is events happen, Swing handles them, sends it to your code, you decide what to do with them. So for instance, for mouse clicked, it sends things like event.x and event.y. Similar with action listener, mouse motion listener, change listener, document listener, which are very interesting how they work. They all have this. So a change listener If you have a J list and you click on a different spot in the list, Swing is sitting there waiting for you to do that. As soon as you do that, it'll send information about what you've clicked on. A document listener can, let's say you have a text area and someone starts typing in that text area, the document listener will call a method every single time some changes are made. And so you can react as someone is typing to what they are typing. Spell checker, for instance. All right, I think that's enough for this one, again, just to keep them short. Thanks for watching.